Hello and welcome to a special edition of All Things Aviation and Aerospace in acknowledgement of Hispanic Heritage Month. I'm Vince Mickens with the Private Air Media Group. As many of my regular viewers know, I do the show weekly to inspire the up-and-coming generation of aspiring young aviation and aerospace professionals. It's all about illuminating the opportunities, possibilities, and options within the aviation and aerospace industries. Many that most are not aware of, but have the skill set to do if only they knew. We're currently multicasting on 3 streaming platforms, including Zoom Webinar, along with my Private Air Media Group YouTube channel and Facebook Live page. I have 3 really amazing guests today who have mastered their specializations in the world of STEM and are playing vital roles in human spaceflight, the special mission of returning samples from Mars, and climate sustainability from space. I'm going to start out by introducing Eric Aguilar. Eric is a senior engineering manager at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California. Prior to his current role with the Mars Samples Return mission, Eric worked on the Perseverance Mars Rover mission. And these all kind of tie together, and he'll tell us a little bit more about that. Eric, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thank you, Vincent. Glad to be back.
Yeah, it's great to have you. We also have with us Dr. Miguel Roman, the founding director of the Earth from Space Institute. Yes, that's what it's called, the Earth from Space Institute, which is a program of the University Space Research Association. And he's going to tell us all about that and how he got into the science of climate, et cetera. Dr. Roman, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks.
It's great to have you. Well, guys, we were talking a little bit earlier prior to the show, and one of the things that we really want to accomplish on this show is to really get perspective about your backgrounds and how you have come to the positions that you have, starting with the beginning, really. Well, we won't start with birth, but close enough. And I'm gonna start with you, Dr. Ramon, or Miguel, whichever you prefer me to use. If you could tell us a little bit about how you got started, and I understand that you actually went the engineering route, systems engineering first, before switching over to science. That in itself is pretty interesting. But why don't you take us back a bit?
Yeah. So I've been I have an engineering brain. I've always been interested in math and science as a core, and that was the pipeline that I put myself on when I was in Puerto Rico as a student. And part of it is I admire my uncle, who was a key engineer for the local Puerto Rico telephone company, and I don't know, it was something about his life bringing that really attracted me. I was very little. I didn't know what an engineering was, but I certainly wanted to be like my uncle because he had a way with things. He used to break things and fix them. He had probably the only one of like 50 Saab Swedish vehicles in the entire island. A Saab 94 1984. I thought the thing was a spaceship. It was amazing. It had electronic log models back in 1984. I was like, this is great. This guy is great. So he went to the University of Puerto Rico in Mayagüez, like all engineers went. And at the time, Puerto Rico's economic development was mostly around manufacturing. And so if you wanted to be an engineer in Puerto Rico, you had 3 options. You could work for the local Puerto Rico telephone company, or you could work for any of the manufacturing pharmaceutical companies, whether it's Pfizer or Johnson & Johnson. Not a lot of people know, but all Tylenol developed globally is made in Puerto Rico, all of it.
Wow.
At the Eli Lilly plant in La Piedra.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so space wasn't anywhere in the realm at that time.
No, like when you live in an island where your mindset, your horizon doesn't extend beyond that insular boundary, all you think is, well, I'm just going to be like my uncle or his friend, work at Bacardi, Pfizer, or Puerto Rico Telecom Company. You don't see that yourself going beyond that, except when you start looking outside of that horizon and you start seeing things like the Arecibo Observatory, and you're like, wait a minute, this is interesting. So I have a picture to show you, because one of the things that happened to me is I had my first time living in the mainland, what we call the U.S. continental United States. And I got sent to be a part of a 10-week NASA internship. And this is an internship that's dear to my heart. It's called the NASA Academy. And I'm gonna show you one picture.
Before you do that, let me back up and ask you, how did that internship even come into play if space really wasn't on your radar?
So NASA has a deep relationship with Hispanic community in Puerto Rico going back to the early 60s. As it turns out, now we have NASA center directors who are Puerto Rican. Puerto Rico has deep roots with NASA. And this goes back to early hiring of Hispanics that started, as I told you, in the early 60s. We've had members like Orlando Figueroa, who helped lead the initial Mars missions program. And they created this heritage of training and pipelines. And I'm the beneficiary of that pipeline. NASA invested in the curriculum of Puerto Rico's engineering program to ensure that you're going to take you're going to learn thermodynamics, but let's also learn about satellite signal processing, just in case. So they're trying to bake the NASA pipeline and techniques that you may not get at a major PhD granting university in Puerto Rico. And so, the moment you apply for a NASA internship, you can check all the boxes. You have to work really hard. You have to work really hard on that. I remember doing those classes while doing my shifts at night, cleaning carpets in Ponderosa and Chinese steakhouses. It's not easy.
Okay.
But if you're willing to work it hard, you give it up. I applied 3 times then.
Oh, you did? It took 3 times to get in the program. So it wasn't like you just applied and bam, you were on your way to the States.
No. You got to work with the faculty at the university, make sure you're well connected with NASA's research program. You got to take those senior level courses. You got to do all that.
3 times over what period of time did it take?
Over about 2 years, 3 different programs. I applied in 2 summers. And I finally, on my sophomore, my junior year, I finally got in. I even took a sea diving certification just to say, maybe NASA wants me to become an astronaut. I don't know, this is so hard. So I actually went off to Aguilar and took some diving classes.
Wow.
And put it on my resume just in case, that journey was all worth it. And NASA was not going to accept me or not, didn't matter, because I was going to get those skills for industry, for aerospace industry. It was going to happen.
So then you finally get accepted in this program at NASA for 10 weeks. Right. And what happens?
So enter Q. Let's see this picture. So week 2 of I arrived at the US and I got this picture. Let me see if I'm showing this correctly. Screen 1. Yeah, so let me show you this picture.
Sure.
So this is me on week 3, being in the United States, and I get a VIP tour of NASA's Johnson Space Center. So that's why I have the orange badges, because we're actually going into the astronaut training facility. And I'm gonna talk very briefly about the ladies that are right next to me. The lady on the right side of me is Dr. Julia Roman Duval. And yes, we're related by marriage. Julia is
from an internship. Nice. Yeah,
now we have 2 kids and a big house and the whole American dream. But she is now one of the lead scientists on the Hubble Space Telescope, and will be managing some of the science activities for the James Webb Space Telescope.
Wow.
She's also a marathoner and competed after having 3 kids in the U.S. Olympic trials in 2016 for Brazil.
No slight to you, Miguel, but I should have had her on with you guys.
So let's set expectations here for a Puerto Rican guy who just became an earth scientist. And then the lady on the right is none other than astronaut Laura O'Hara from Sugar Land, Texas.
Wow.
And you can see the height here. So both of them are around 5'6", and I'm around 6'1". And you can't see it on the picture, but around Laurel's on the left side, there's a practice mock-up of the Soyuz capsule. I couldn't fit in that thing. They were more than happy. They were happy to hang out on the Soyuz capsule for 2 hours. Like, no, I want out. Just like, and so they quickly know that Laurel was more, just height-wise, was going to be more than capable of becoming an astronaut. But anyways, this is all to say, all of us, the three of us, were engineers, and we started as engineers.
Wow.
And our journey through space research and space technology took us to some very different, life threw us some interesting curves. And so but
that was also a major change in your life at that time.
That's right. So
it was a turning point.
Yeah. So I was an electrical engineer, but I was built by NASA to learn how to process data in ways that could help me contribute to the Earth Science mission at NASA. And it took me a master's degree and my first year of grad school at Boston University to figure that one out. Because that's the thing about being an engineer. You have the embarrassment of riches. You're good for a lot of things, but you need to find your life calling.
Sure.
My life calling was climate change, because I'm from Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico is one of the most places that is going to be battered by climate change.
Right. We've
so
already actually seen that.
Yeah, and so to me, the use of space technology and the talent from the aerospace community to bring that to bear to help address the climate crisis, something that you can only do through the unique and global vantage point of space, it's key to preserving life on Earth.
Sure.
And so we've taken that, yeah.
I was just going to say, before we dig deeper into that aspect of your life, I want to give Eric a chance to chime in here and talk a little bit, because he's on the engineering side of things, and talk a little bit, Eric, about your background, how you got started, and if there's some similarities between what you've experienced in starting out in your path as compared to Miguel's.
Yeah, no, thank you, Vince. Miguel, that was awesome. Great picture. I love it. That was great. And, similar to Miguel, right? Growing up, I didn't have a huge number of like, oh, I want to work for NASA or JPL. That was not in the cards. It was, I'm thinking maybe, I do have a math and science, a really passion for it. And I thought, okay, engineering, but what kind? And I said, well, electrical, because they're everywhere. Guaranteed I'll have a job. So maybe that's what I should do. It wasn't even, understanding like, oh, here's my passion, here's where I want to go. It was more like, I just want to make sure I have a job, a good job when I, get out of college, right? And so, I went, ended up going to Arizona State University. I got my bachelor's in electrical engineering from them. And one of my internships was with Honeywell Aerospace, working and testing with flight management systems and doing that kind of work.
Was that your first introduction to anything that had to do with aerospace and aviation?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I was, as an intern, I was, asked to come in and help, initially was sort of help, I'll say push paper around, right? Get some, some coding, get some coding standards and put it into all the various code modules that the team was working on. And, fortunate for me, I was sort of like, hey, this is probably not exactly what I wanted to do. I really want to do more stuff. So how can I finish my work here faster? So I was able to actually write up a program that effectively did all my work for me. And I did all my work in like about a week or two when they wanted me for 10 weeks. So I kind of had to force Honeywell to give me more work to do. and by sort of by showing them, hey, I can actually do more than what you maybe thought I could do, right? I wrote a program, it went in, did everything I needed to do, just did it really fast.
Eric, I have to ask you, how did that compare to your fellow interns? Were they that capable, or were you kind of shining there?
Well, I think, I think they were capable. We all just had, it was all sort of the different different groups that you were put into. Now, my thing was I was also, Honeywell was local to where I was going to school in Arizona. So, they said, well, how about you start doing some testing since you seem to know what you're doing here, right? So they threw me into like the software, hardware testing, like the system level testing. And I started testing, with new builds of software and hardware and trying to make sure that the flight management system was working as expected. And then later they said, hey, well, I know you're going to school, but if you're willing to work part-time, we can hire you on as a academic part-time, and you can work up to 30 hours a week if you like. You got to manage your time.
So would you credit yourself with the initiative you took on that to
I think so, right? It was
the way
pushing,
you did.
Exactly. And it was wanting, and sort of like what Miguel said, right? It's this want and desire to do the hard work, right? Having, pushing forward, because it was sort of like, I don't want my internship to be whatever they're giving me. I want to be in charge of it. So I want to push forward. I want to break through and say, hey, I can do more than what you're showing me here, right? So that was it's actually the same thing I tell the interns I hire too right now, right? When I'm on the other side of it now, I said, look, I'm going to start to give you assignments. I'm still trying to gauge your ability and capability here. You push past it, that means I'm just going to give you more and more and juice your assignments. So it's up to you to show me that you want to take those reins and you want to take that work in, right?
Yeah, that's a great thing to point out, though. I think it's really important for young people watching this show, and even their parents and those in the industry, that does make a difference. The ones that take the initiative, the ones that want more, and the ones that push for more. But I'm curious with you, does this come all the way back from your childhood? Were you like this in middle or high school or even before, in terms of wanting more, curiosity, and natural leadership?
Yeah, I think I'll say a couple things to that, right? One is I had this curiosity of wanting, how do things work and everything else. My dad used to say, hey, you can't watch anything with you because you're always telling me, oh, they did it this way, or they did, they did something, and I'm always trying to break down what just happened, right? And so, one of the things with that is, I got a lot of that curiosity. I think I got the hard work cemented in from my parents, right? I saw them work. My mom's a business owner, so she has a small business that she runs, and she did that whole transition while we were growing up. So I can see her doing that work. Same with my dad, right? And so, I saw that, and it was sort of instilled within me, to do that. The leadership, I'll say, I know I am, and I am in leadership positions, and I do that, but I feel that is something that I still strive to do better. No matter how good someone tells me, oh, you're such a good leader, you can do this, you can do that, you have, great qualities there. But, I always feel that it's not something that you can ever, at least in my mind, it's not something that you can ever just reach and you become a leader. I think you're always striving to be a better leader every single time. So
work in progress.
It's always a work in progress, at least in my mind, right? So yeah. I try to always, yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, didn't mean to interrupt you, but with the interns, now that you're on that side of the fence where you're the ones looking at them and their skill sets and their potential in the industry, what kind of qualities do you look for with them when you're selecting interns and when you're bringing them into the fold?
So obviously, they have to show they have the right, aptitude, right? Grades really help out with that, right? Also, there's a thing that I like to do, and for all the people that eventually will run into me at a ship conference or something like that, where I'm recruiting, you'll know one of my little secrets, right? But the idea is, I actually, one of the things I like to probe on is this: do the people understand their own limitations? Right. And have the ability and the courage to say, I really don't know, but I can go ask and I can go get this information and process it and do it. Right. I know that everybody, especially anybody even coming out of school, no matter how good your grades are, it's not going to be a direct translation into the job. You're going to have to work. You're going to have to understand. There's going to be things that you're going to learn on the job. But you have to have that ability to say, I actually don't know. I have to be able to step back and say, I don't know that, but I can learn it, or I can, and so sometimes I actually start to, as I look at their resumes and talk to them, I start to ask them questions that I think they actually don't know. And I can start to tell if they actually have, if they're starting to try to lie to me about, oh no, I do know that, or I've done that, or they try to start making things up, then I probably know they're not the right fit for me, because
they're not being honest with themselves.
They're not being honest to themselves. And then at the same time, right, I know that everything that I do at JPL, from the sample caching stuff to the stuff I'm doing now, those things have never been done before. So there's going to be questions. There's going to be, I'm going to not know something. As much as I've worked at JPL, I'm going to not know something that I have to go and research and ask and find somebody that does, get that information, process it, and then come back and do the work, right? So I have to be, we, as much as I've done it, I'm sure Miguel runs into that too, right? There are things that we just don't know, but we have to be able to say that, understand it, recognize it, and then, do it, and then come back in. I had one of my interns, I when I was interviewing him, I said, can you also do this? And he said, look, to be honest, I don't do that. I can learn, but it's just something I don't know, and this and that. And I think he got nervous that, interview's over, I'm done, because I didn't know that little piece. And I said, no, it's great. I'm glad you told me that. That's not really what I wanted you for, but I just wanted to see if, you were able to talk.
You're doing an integrity check. Hey, listen.
Exactly.
While I have both of you, because I know that you're going to have to bow out in a bit, Eric, and I wanted to ask both of you together. So both of you are obviously very accomplished with what you're doing and did very well in school, et cetera. Both of you are very persistent with moving forward in your careers, starting early on. But dealing with the elephant in the room for a minute, you're both considered Hispanic minority, or some description of that. And so when you were, for example, with you, Miguel, when you got into this internship at NASA, I'm guessing you were probably a minority in the group. And Eric, the same thing with you when you started with Honeywell. I would imagine the same thing. Can both of you speak to that a little bit, please?
Sure.
Elephant in the room. Eric, why don't you start?
Yeah, I mean, so Honeywell was good about, right, diversity, but yeah, you're right. At the end of the day, right, I was, probably, 10% or, of the company that, looked like me, right, had, dark skin and Hispanic last name, right? So, but I was able to, sort of, fit in with the technical side of stuff, right? I think I've been a little fortunate in, a lot of the places that I've been to and worked at, right, focus more on your technical ability than the color of your skin.
So if you had the skill set and you could do the job, so be it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what it came down to, right? I mean, they really, at first, I think some of the surprise wasn't that it's like, it's a Hispanic kid that can do the work. It's like, it's a sophomore in college that knows this stuff. Like, right. That's like, that was their surprise, not so much the, are you sure you can do that? Because you don't look like you're from around here, kind of thing. No, it was more that, and I think partly in Honeywell, there was actually a lot more international people, right? A lot of different backgrounds that were from
a lot of different cultures. Okay.
A lot of different cultures. So it just kind of meshed that way. And JPL was the same way, very much a melting pot there, right? And same thing. They really look at your technical ability to get something done, and really the other stuff really doesn't play too much. And I think I've been fortunate in that aspect through my career, right?
Yeah. Miguel, would you say the same in reference to your internship at NASA when you first were starting out?
Actually, it's about the same at the early career, not as much at the stage where I am. And you need to understand it's earth science, it's climate science. So when you start thinking about our national dialogue about the underserved communities that are most likely going to be affected by climate change, there's certainly Hispanics are at the top, with African Americans and many different groups who have for many years being left out in the decisions about the infrastructure that we'll need to build, from Flint water, hurricanes. Part of what we're talking about today is that you can train anyone skills. You may not have them at the time, but training skills with people who have a spongy brain, it's easy. But bringing people with the right attitude and background in certain situations, it's a different ballgame. I oversaw the 2000 hurricane season at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy during when Hurricane Maria was in Puerto Rico. My background being there at the time, advising the president on these issues made a big difference because it involved a lot of understanding. I've advised the federal government on many issues pertaining to Latin America and the Caribbean. So of course, having that background is essential to being able to make progress around policy of issues of energy, equity, climate change, disasters. And so certainly there are some specific areas, especially with our next generation Latinos, where families are like, do we want to teach them Spanish? Yeah, you want to, because that's a skill set that they're going to need. Then they will be a major asset for them to step into a leadership role. I'm currently the youngest and only Hispanic director in U.S. Air history.
Wow.
That speaks a lot to a lot of,
but to a lot of what we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, so that, and when I was an intern, I was the only Hispanic intern.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's you're bringing in a perspective, but you need to find that strength that brings in and enhances the organization. And that is critical skills, thinking about who benefits from NASA Earth Science mission at the societal level. So I get to think about things like that and advise NASA in ways that help advance the science for societal benefit.
Sure. Let me introduce Dr. Pablo de Leon. Pablo, welcome to the show.
Good morning.
From the University
of North
Dakota.
Vince, how are you? Happy to be here. How are you?
Happy to have you.
Hello,
too.
everybody.
I'm gonna. We're having your video quality is kind of bouncing around a little bit. I don't know if it's your Wi-Fi or whatever. But while you take a look at that, Eric, I know you're going to have to go in a minute. Eric, tell us a little bit about first. Your involvement with the Mars Perseverance rover, the Perseverance Mars rover, and what you did with that, and then how that transitioned to what you're currently doing, which is Mars sample recovery or
sample return.
Yes.
Yeah, sample return.
Yes, yeah, sample return. I knew it was an R.
Yeah. For the Perseverance rover, my task was to be the assistant product delivery manager for the sample caching system, and I manage a fairly large team of engineers that range from system engineering, mechanical stress analysis, planetary protection, contamination control. Our development of our ground support equipment, integration and test, and test, and then just test beds overall, right? So as part of that, right, we developed a robotic system with 17 different actuators that all had to work in concert to actually drill and take core samples out of Mars and cache them and store them for a future return mission. And I remember at the time there was a lot, as I was doing some of these discussions with various media folks, right? One of the questions came up asking, well, what about the return? Are you excited about that? And I remember saying, you know what, that's a problem for someone else. I am focused on getting us to Mars, landing, doing the job, collecting samples. And And now that other person that is now responsible or has to deal with getting to Mars and picking up samples is now it's me. So I went from doing the collection now, so now I'm on phase 2, right? So now I'm working as the product delivery manager for motor control, and we're developing a motor controller. It's actually a part of what we're doing is actually developing a lightweight motor controller, because we have so many things that we're trying to take with us that we actually need the mass savings. So I'm developing a motor controller that's probably about the size of a toaster when it comes down to it, that will actually control all the landing engines as we come into the surface during entry, descent, and landing. And then we'll deploy the solar arrays. We'll articulate the landing legs, and then we'll also interface with the European robotic arm or system for pulling in and installing the tubes into the rocket, right, into the MAV, the Mars Ascent Vehicle.
Got you. So in terms of sample return, what time frame are we looking at with that?
So we're actually still, I'll say we're still in the process of figuring that out. At the moment, I couldn't tell you for sure the entire timeline, but I'll give you my portion, right? We are looking at a 2028 launch of our mission, but it's a combination of multiple
over 8 years from now.
Yes. Over 7 years from now.
Sorry, 7 years. Yeah.
I know how much time I don't have to develop it. So it's about 7 years from now, but actually I have to develop it actually even sooner than that. I have to because by the time I have to finish my development, it has to actually go and get processed for flight and go into the vehicle and all that other stuff. So I actually have about 4.5 years to develop my portion of this, which is a brand new motor controller that we're going to use to land this thing and do a bunch of different
operations. It's just mind-boggling how long it I mean, maybe to you guys that are in it and do it, it probably seems like I don't have enough time, but to the average person outside, it's like, wow, 4.5 years that you have to put something like this together that's the size of a toaster. Besides the time factor, how many people on the team are working on just that one aspect in terms of sample return?
So we're still planning we're still in the, I'll say, the planning phases, right? We have started. My current team is about 15 people, but we are going to grow to about 40 once we actually get into manufacturing, testing, and putting this thing together. So it'll grow from the current state of about 15 people, where we're doing some technology development to make sure that we can repackage and get this thing as small and lightweight as possible, and then once we actually have to get through production run and testing and software development, we're going to develop our own software. We're actually developing a new computer for this, right? So it's a brand new flight computer,
right?
Plus a motor control electronics. So there's a lot of new development here, and it's plus software and everything. So we're going to have a fairly large team and a fairly short window.
And you have to collaborate and coordinate with other teams that deal with other aspects of what this goes into, prepping it for launch, what it's going to do when it gets on the other end, and all of that. That's other teams that are involved as well, right?
Right, and that's what requires such a amount of detail and planning at this stage of the game, right? And as you said, right, you can argue that, well, if I had to go build something, it can take me this long. But some of the parts that we're actually building, some of it could take actually 38 weeks to get from a chip manufacturer, for instance, right? So it has to be radiation hardened, for the radiation that Mars will see, or that we'll see, flying to Mars. So,
and all the different factors.
Yeah. So some of this stuff just takes a long time to get. So if I have to, sure, I can order it early, but what happens if it doesn't work, right? What do I do? How do I react to that? So it's getting that planning, it's getting that understanding of what's going on, how to build it, And then, we have to make electronics architecture decisions today that we may not fully understand until we actually implement a larger system to see how it's all going to react, right? So we actually have to plan for different aspects and
okay. Well, listen, I want to bring Pablo De Leon into the conversation. He's joined us and been waiting patiently. And Eric, whenever you have to actually bow out to get back to work at JPL, feel free to do that. But if you want to stay with us for a bit and hear what Dr. De Leon has to say, that'd be great too.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for making the time.
Minutes. Thank you. Thank
you. Dr. De Leon, Pablo, as you tell me to call you, but thank you for being back on the program again. I know you're really busy there. As a matter of fact, you said you're right in the middle of some things specifically today, which is why you had to join us late, but we're really glad to have you on the show and look forward to talking about your background and everything. I'm going to skip through to my little introduction I had for you earlier. And just to let people know exactly who you are. So Dr. De Leon is a professor and the chair of the Department of Space Studies at the University of North Dakota. They should say University of Code, North Dakota. He's also the director of the UND Spaceflight Laboratory. And we had such a great conversation about what he does in terms of spacesuits and their design and their effect on humans and the long-term things they're going to be looking at when people are going to places like Mars and things like that. Again, Pablo, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Vince. It's a pleasure to be here and to have this companion of colleagues, also Latinos like myself. So it's a pleasure to be back. Sorry about the problems I'm having with the camera, though. It seems it's not passing the vibration test.
Or you're actually on the moon and you're not telling us that, and that's why we're getting this kind of a signal.
I wish. Yeah, I wish.
Listen, we've been talking about backgrounds of Eric and Miguel in terms of their early start. And I know you've done it before, but love for you to tell us your early start and how you started in the direction of what you're doing now and how you became interested in space and where that all began, going back to your home country.
Sure. I'm originally from Argentina, and I do remember very vividly when Neil Armstrong walked for the first time on the moon in 1969, and that's one of my earliest memories. And I'll say I think I mentioned this to you before, that I can't remember a time where I was not interested in space. To me, has been a lifelong passion, and I was lucky enough to be able to get access to the education that allowed me to end up working here. When I was a kid, I never thought I was going to live in the United States and work for NASA on projects, and I was going to be working on spacesuits, anything like that. I wanted to, but I didn't know the way. So like most of us, we were able to do what we want through lots of obstacles through our life, and overcoming problems and obstacles, I think is very important for young people today, to tell them, listen, there is a way, and it doesn't matter where you come from if you are really passionate about what you want to do. So in my particular case, I was always interested in space, always wanted to do things related to, in particular, human space flight, which is my area of expertise. So the way was bumpy, to say the least, but you know.
How did you pull the two together? How did you tie in your passion with actually starting to make it come to fruition?
Well, I always thought that life was too short to spend most of your day doing something that you don't enjoy. So sometimes you have to make sacrifices on the way, and you know, and be uncomfortable for perhaps long periods of time until you can find that particular space that opens for you and allows you to start working on something that you really like. So in my case, it was, I had a lot of venues, and I always tried to choose the one that got me closer to space and closer to what I wanted to do. So again, a lot of opportunities open to me when I decided to come to the United States, and because before I was doing some things related to space, but not to the level that I wanted to. So in reality, and we have to say it, this is still the country of opportunities that kind of allow me to work in what I really wanted to do. And now, I'm directing this the Human Spaceflight Lab, where we are building prototypes of spacesuits for NASA for Mars, no less. So so I have been incredibly fortunate, but again, this was tied up of on the persistence on trying to force the circumstances to do the thing that I really wanted to do. I mentioned, I think in a previous program, that I grew up in a farm. So my kind of my destiny was either milking cows or the most related to space was to be able to repair engines for a tractor or anything like that. So it was really far. And
you see Miguel is nodding in agreement with you. He can relate from Puerto Rico.
Yes. So and when you think about Argentina, you can't get any farther from United States in the continent, in the Americas, right, than Argentina. So it was a hard process, but
what was a turning point for you, Pablo? What was the turning point when you came to the States? When did things start to move in the direction that you were like, okay, I got this?
Well, in one point I was already working for a very fairly modest space program that we had in Argentina. It was mainly sounding rockets and first satellites and that kind of stuff. But I was really interested in human spaceflight. So at that time I had two choices. One was the Soviet Union, and that's the United States. United States was kind of up north. The language seemed to be easier. I don't know at the end, because I still have a strong accent after like 30 years of being here, and that's not going to change anytime soon, at least. But I think that, Hollywood played a very important role, because the movies and the series and the cartoons and all that made, at least in Latin America, we feel way closer to the United States than we do, say, to Russia. While I was also admiring the Russian cosmonautics, the Russian space exploration, I felt that it was going to be a more direct way to do it with States, and that's how it happened. And again, I had to do some other jobs that were unrelated before I could get my foot on the door with space. But it was all worthwhile. So
yeah, apparently the Martians are really trying to do a number on your video. So I just wanted to let everybody know that it's just a technical thing with your video. But while you're doing that, I'm going to go to you a little bit, Miguel. Miguel, you were about to tell us earlier about a little bit more specific about climate sustainability and how important it is that you can do it from space. So go ahead.
Let me just emphasize with Dr. Leon, because one of the key lessons from this amazing panel that we are having, and thank you, Vince, for facilitating it, that underrepresented minorities don't face the same pipeline as other members of the American community, because we don't have that privilege of legacy that they have, like, if I'm the, if my father went to an Ivy League school before me, then I'm a legacy. There's no such thing when you're a URM. You're the
Right.
first one in. I'm the first PhD,
Yeah.
in my whole family. So that is very important as we're talking about these, because as you're thinking, the kids that are listening to this, the decisions that you will make down to the personal level are going to matter. One of the things that I think I tell people is, if you want to be a PhD in aerospace or earth science, you're gonna have to do what Pablo says, which is step out of your comfort zone. What does that mean? It means that you're going to have to be a poor grad student for a little longer, because you're all going to be successful and get a bachelor's degree, and immediately Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, and all these big aerospace contractors are going to try to hire you. But you're going to have to say, no, I'm going to try to live off a $20,000 stipend for another 4 years so I can become a PhD. Because the moment you accept that job after undergrad, you're in a terminal degree, you just got a house, you got a new partner, a dog, and a kid, and it's going to be really hard to keep those things off while finishing a PhD in part-time. Most people don't make it.
Pablo,
and because you're not part of the
legacy,
yeah, and because you're not part of that legacy, daddy and mommy are not going to put 20% off your mortgage. We're not part of those folks. You're going to have to make some very tough personal decisions so that you can reach your dream of being part of the aerospace community at a leadership level. Yes. Everyone can make it in the undergrad, but let's face it, that's like having a high school diploma right now. You need to be certified. You need to be very specific skill sets, whether it's mechanical, mechatronics, or devices. This requires you to have a very advanced understanding. You'd likely be the world's top expert at that. And that's what happens with climate change. Vince, is you gotta be able to integrate that. The reason why NASA keeps coming to us, to USRA, is because we have system engineering skills, we have mission design skills, and we understand the science to promote climate issues all together. Gotcha. Without that, and then you're just an environmental scientist, that's great. You're using our data, publishing papers, that you can do that at university. But if you want to work at USRA, you want to work at an NASA center, you're going to have to do more than just teach. You have to have that space, onboard space capability.
Tell us exactly what you Tell us exactly what you do in the climate science realm from space. What does that actually mean, particularly to the young people watching, in terms of, so what should I gear myself towards?
When you talk about the space business that we talk about so far, you talk about cutting metal, building stuff, building an actuator, building an instrument that's going to be integrated into a spacecraft. And we've talked about the fact that that may take 4 years or 10 years to get it and put it inside a rocket and then launching it. My part is, after you do that, you launch it in space, you do early orbit checkout, and you transition that spacecraft in operations, and you begin to take measurements for very long periods of time. And so NASA has embedded upon me a leading role to manage these operating satellites, the Terra, the Aqua, the Suomi MPP, and NOAA 20 satellites, a team of over 100 principal investigators that look at this data and make improvements on it so we can track climate change in real time. And so my work is to oversee the entire science team of NASA's land discipline. It involves over 100 investigators. I have folks at Goddard Space Flight Center that measure the sea ice. I have folks at JPL that measure the land surface temperature and look over urban heat islands to make sure that people aren't getting in trouble. I have people looking at air quality. I have people looking at stuff in the DoD world that I can't tell you. So I look at different, my job is to be able to promote and advocate for the science. And we're lucky enough that these engineers like Dr. Leon, that they're building these amazing systems that are way past their intended design. What does that mean? We build these systems, flight systems, that are designed to last 3 years in space, but then, Vince, they last 20 years. And we're getting double, triple, quadruple our return on investments in terms of the science because they're operating way past. This is the beauty of American spacecraft engineering infrastructure. We always overbuild beyond the spec.
Yeah.
And we, the scientists, are the beneficiaries of that because that means more measurements, more science that are allowing the US government to lead in climate accords around issues of, okay, we know that China is contributing this amount of carbon emissions. What are you going to do about that? This is what we're going to do. We're going to reduce methane emissions by X amount by 2030. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to build instruments to monitor methane emissions from space at very fine resolution at 3-hour latency. Within 3 hours, if there's a methane leak anywhere in the world, we're going to detect it and we're going to fine you for that. So the aerospace role is becoming integrated with society and public health, in climate, environmental issues. It's no longer being curious and exploring. We're getting right into the weeds of managing our economy from space.
Gotcha.
The only way our nation is going to thrive in this planet is by having space technology to monitor the Earth from space.
Yeah, I could do a whole show on you. I can see that now. Dr. De Leon, tell us a little bit about your aspect of what you teach there at UND with space studies and particularly with the laboratory that you run, and just give us the nitty gritty of that, if you would.
Sure. Ours is a graduate department, so we just offer master's and PhD levels in space studies and aerospace sciences. And what we try to do is to create a very multidisciplinary program where you can see all the different aspects of space, and there are many. And sometimes people, just take into consideration the engineering side of it or the scientific side, but there's also space policy, space law. There are a number of sociological issues, space psychology. There are a number of topics that are very important also for space exploration, especially as we are moving forward into longer duration space flights, and where you have to take almost every single discipline of human knowledge into space. Things like, I don't know, nutrition or dental medicine, odontology, or things like that will happen, that you will need those disciplines in a long duration space flight because things are going to happen and you have to react to them. So what we're looking at is at every single human discipline and in which way it contributes to the future of humanity in space. So ours is a small program. We have 8 faculty members and 150 master students and 30-something PhD students. So it's fairly small.
But very important work that you guys are doing.
Well, our graduates are all over NASA, the contractors, now the Space Force, and all over the space industry. So we are very fortunate to have almost 1,000 graduates all over the United States and the world that they are doing amazing. They are doing amazing projects and amazing things. So we have 2 components. One is the distance component of the program. So students are taking it while they are full-time employees. It's difficult to do because you have to handle, your job, your family, and then the graduate program.
Right.
But we offer that as well. 1/3 of our students are in the military, and also we have a campus, a group of campus students, and they're doing amazing work as GRAs, as graduate research assistants. They're working in different projects. For example, I have an excellent group of students with me in the Human Spaceflight Lab. Right now, they're printing using flexible filaments to print portions of prototype spacesuits. So it's very fun, interesting, and kind of cutting edge research as well. So we are pressurizing prototypes that are made with a 3D printer, that just a couple of years ago, it was just for printing small toys, and now we're doing pressurizing structures with it. So
Wow.
so it's very interesting. So as soon as they are, I always joke with them. I say that before you guys, before the ink in your diplomas is dry, they're already picking you guys up from SpaceX or Blue Origin or NASA or Lockheed Martin or you name it.
Right.
So we have been very successful placing our graduates immediately in the workforce. And we mentioned this before, we're living a kind of a renaissance of space activities, something that I never saw before, probably happened in the 60s during the Apollo times.
Exactly.
It's happening again.
Yeah.
We saw, for example, yesterday, the excitement about the second human rated flight of Blue Origin with William Shatner, Captain Kirk, and all these.
Who knew Captain Kirk would actually go into space?
Unbelievable. At 90.
At 90 years old. So, amazing.
Unbelievable. So, and a couple of weeks ago, with the Inspiration 4 crew, where 4 people untrained to go into space, went for 3 days into orbit, higher than the International Space Station. I mean, these things are science fiction. If I'm not seeing it with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe it. So the level of activities that are happening to human spaceflight right now is just amazing. So we are very fortunate. The ones that care about space exploration are so fortunate of being able to be in this particular time in history where all these amazing things are happening. So I think is absolutely exciting, and you know, the day doesn't have enough hours for me to keep up with all the things that are going on, and I think this is.
Yeah, and speaking of running out of time, we've run out of time with the show. But before I wrap things up, I wanted to give you an opportunity, and I'll start with you, Pablo, to give a little bit of advice about, from all that you've experienced and observed with your students, whether they're undergrad, graduate, postgraduate. And by the way, point well taken that Miguel brought up earlier, that keep going past your undergrad degree another 4 years, and you put yourself in major demand at the PhD level. And you just kind of reemphasize that by saying that you guys can hardly hold on to people. By the time they get, they graduate, they're already being poached by NASA or SpaceX or whomever. So, but any parting words of advice for the next generation?
Well, I fully agree with what Miguel was mentioning regarding that nowadays the bachelor's degree is just not enough. I see sometimes the students eager to go to the world because they are starting to get offers from companies, but I always try to tell them, listen, wait a little bit longer, stay in school, get a graduate degree, because you will be way more competitive in the world of tomorrow. Sometimes they are thinking about just next week that they want to get a job and be out of school, and I think it's a mistake. They should try to become real experts in their area of research. They will be way more competitive, more employable, if you like, in a future that will require these advanced degrees, terminal degrees. Sometimes I'm successful with my advice, and sometimes I'm not. And sometimes I get this promise of the students saying, "Oh, I'll be back next year. I'll do an experience next year." But as Miguel was mentioning, then you get your mortgage, then you get your rent, and you get a family, and you get a baby on the way, and you can't do that.
Priorities change.
Yes, exactly. So I think it's important to do that, to be persistent in your goals, and have a longer term vision of life in general, and work and your priorities, and try to complete your degrees. But again, this is a perfect time to be involved with these activities. So I encourage young people who want to get into space to just do it with full confidence, and move forward with your interest and your passions.
Well said. Miguel, closing comments and advice?
Yeah, and I know this is very important for the Hispanic community, because one of the things that we don't mention is that sometimes that decision is done with the family deciding and weighing in. And because imagine you just went through university, your mom may be having 3 or 4 jobs to making sure that you're going through university, and now you're saying that you're gonna stay for another 2 years. Are you freaking kidding? Get back, you're gonna help us with the business. And I've seen this happen so many times. So I've had to visit the families of the students and say, look, we just need them for 1 more, 2 more years, and here's gonna be the bigger investment. And it is gonna be very important. So I know that having the negotiating skills to meet with your stakeholders, your family, the people that care and brought you to be a member of your university is very important. And in that you can count on your mentors to help you vouch for that. I went on a major, loan to go to Cornell University, in spite of the fact that NASA gave me a fellowship. My mom was like, "Are you sure you want to take a loan?" And I'm like, and NASA hired me and paid the loan. I only have to pay the taxes. There's nothing but debt for taxes. You know that.
So you
only have to pay
focused.
the taxes. So stay focused. Don't worry about the money, because you're in the best sector in American economy right now. This is going to explode. There's going to be a major realignment in the way NASA does business, and it's going to be, and that realignment is going to be incumbent upon having a very world-class STEM workforce.
Yeah. Boy, you guys are a wealth of information. Thank you very much for sharing. I am so sorry that we've actually run over time, but it's worth it just to hear your perspective on it. And I think both of you emphasizing the importance of staying focused and persevering with what you really want to do, even if it's going to take some sacrifice. But Miguel, you just said something that rings really true, and I think is extremely important, and that is really educating the parents about what's really important for the growth of their kid, getting into a great industry and how much they can accomplish in this industry, if given the chance and if they pursue a little bit harder and longer, even though everybody has to make a sacrifice to do so. So appreciate you bringing that up. Anyhow, guys, thank you very much. Dr. De Leon, thanks for pulling away from your activities today to join us for a bit. Miguel, thanks for hanging in there for the whole thing while I was fitting everybody into a 1-hour show. Appreciate you guys' input and advice and insight.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Vince, for the invitation. And Miguel, it's a pleasure to meet you. All right.
All right, un placer igualmente. Thank you, Vince. It was great. I had fun.
Okay, great. Well, wish you guys the best with everything, and take care. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you, everybody, for watching All Things Aviation and Aerospace. I'm Vince Mickens of the Private Air Media Group. As you know, every week we do our best to share enlightening perspectives on the plethora of opportunities in the aviation and aerospace industry. And for those of you who are interested in pursuing various careers, this is a great show to give you some ideas and some insight on what to look for. You can always find the show, if you haven't had a chance, or you only caught part of it, on the Private Air Media Group YouTube channel and Facebook Live page. And until next week, everybody stay safe, take care, and have a good one.